Männer. Es war ein langer Krieg. Es war ein harter Krieg. Ihr habt tapfer und stolz für euer Vaterland gekämpft. Seid eine besondere Truppe, die ineinander...
Hey everyone, this is the Hydra Hut. I hope you all had a Merry Christmas or a Happy Holiday, whatever you might celebrate. I know I should have finished this up before Christmas, but things came up and I didn't finish, so I'm going to go ahead and try and get this book all done, at least before December's over with. The cover, or well, thumbnail that I used for this is actually the cover for Chapter 5, which is going to be the one that we're covering. The demon in that is really more foreshadowing for the next chapter, and actually next 2 chapters. I've been wrong about the, or mismarking these. It's actually a 7-part book, but I've been calling it 6 because I'm a bad channel owner. Anyway, it's really more foreshadowing for the next 2 chapters than this one. It does give us an idea of what this creature in the rocks is going to look like, though. So, again, this is Klaus, How Santa Claus Began. This is by Grant Morrison, Dan Mora. Let's begin. So as we start back on Chapter 5, we're back in the library, and the Dagmar is talking to Jonas about a book that her father had been showing her, and she wants him to show her where this book is and tell her more about it. He's telling his mother about the book that he looked at with his father, which was the same black book that we saw the Baron looking at earlier in the story. He also starts to tell her about the Christmas letter that he helped write for him. And we get a sudden flashback to the mine where the black rock was, and we see the Baron sitting there against it, talking to the rock. He doesn't seem to be happy to be agreeing to what he's agreeing to, but he's agreeing to it nonetheless. We get another shot back where into the library where Jonas and Dagmar hear a voice from the distance, well, from out of frame, basically accusing them of treachery. As we turn the page, we see the Baron coming through the door with a massive sword dragging across the ground. He's essentially hinting that the mother might be plotting against him, and he tells Jonas to leave because there's adult talking to be done. Jonas scurries out as the Baron immediately starts jumping into Dagmar, accusing her of treachery, essentially. And that the king is not coming here to check up on the kingdom, but the king is actually coming here with his men to kill the Baron. This is all in the Baron's mind, as will be established in the dialogue, but since I'm not exactly reading it, I thought I'd fill you in a little bit, because I'm that kind of guy. As the story progresses, we get Jonas, being a typical little kid, telling the guards to leave because there's family talk here, rather than understanding that his dad's gone crazy and somebody might be in danger and having the guards do something. He sends them off so that he won't get in trouble for listening in and spying, which is what he does. Get another shot of the Baron just looking absolutely insane as he's talking about the voice in the rocks giving him strength and power. Here we see Jonas listening through the door, the guard's gone, listening to the parents argue. As the Baron starts to monologue, he starts expressing his true feelings about why it happened, and he starts to look more vulnerable. His insanity kind of moves in and out, and we can see that in his dialogue and how he's talking to Dagmar, and we can see that he really does love her, and he really doesn't want anything to happen to her, but he's scared, confused, controlled. Over on the next page, we jump back into Grimsvig, where we see the rooftops. Get a nice silhouette of the moon, the clouds, and Klaus behind a chimney. And this is where we see Klaus dropping presents down a chimney for the very first time. Doop, doop, doop. Dropping right into coals, but apparently doesn't matter. And then we get another nice shot. Klaus running across, and we can hear some guards talking, basically questioning how Santa could do what he does. You'll also notice that in all the other stories, Santa's bag has been brown. And now it's suddenly red. I honestly think the reason they did this is because in all these shots, it's going to be very dark scenes, and this red is going to draw our eye to where Santa is, which you will see coming up. So here we get these nice tall panel shots, first 2 full panel pages, where the guards are talking about this ghost Santa and how it's amazing he could be real, but it's got to be some sort of professionals, and they're just going back and forth over whether or not it's real or not. And you can see up here the nice skyline. The next panel they're talking again, and we can see this bright red from the bag, which draws our eyes up to see Klaus jumping above the guards talking about him. Basically, they're talking about how he does it. We see how he does it. See him dropping presents into the chimneys, and then he gets to this letter. Dear Santa, I hope my very special wish will find you. We immediately move away from that to the guardsmen. Earlier in the story, they mentioned that the guards at the prison were kind of understaffed and they needed more ones that were really willing to beat the prisoners because the ones down there were getting kind of squeamish over the job. Here we see Klaus show up at the prison. The guard accosts him and he says, well, I thought this was supposed to be Sergeant Linkfist. And Klaus says, I thought this was supposed to be Sergeant Linkfist. The guard says that Linkfist was actually gotten rid of. He's now in his place, and he recognizes Klaus's outfit as being a royal guard. So instantly he's like, whoa, wait, shouldn't you be hanging out with the Baron? And Klaus knocks him out. There's actually a good bit of dialogue and some joke here, but I'm not going to ruin it. And then we see the shot inside the prison. 2 guards basically talking about the Yuletime spirit and how amazing this Santa guy is and how it's different than just the stories like when they were kids. Our old friend, the slave murderer, immediately starts jumping their case for being talkative instead of working, and is about to throw down some lashings again when, boom, Santa throws out some justice. Look at that. That is a wonderful shot. Even a little tooth in there. Klaus don't mess around. And then the best part about this chapter is all the 80s one-liners Klaus is dropping out all the time. By that and very interesting art. I don't want to ruin them, but I'm going to say this one. Someone had to tell him. Only one man has to work Yuletime, and that's me. We get this sweet shot of Santa just looking heroic. One of the guards basically tries to say, call him out and say, I'm going to make you bleed. And one of the slaves takes him out with a shovel. We get this little banter between Santa and the slaves. They the townspeople. They're not really slaves, but they are. They want him to lead them. And he says, no, I'm here to remind children that there's still joy in this world. I'm not a leader. I'm not a warrior. The gift I'm giving you is the freedom to spend time with your family and do it yourself. Which is good. It's teaching self-preservation, teaching you how to work for yourself. It's a lesson that Santa's got. We jump back to the Baron talking to Dagmar, basically pleading with her and himself, trying to figure out his insanity from listening to this voice for so long. He admits to her / accuses her of only loving him because of the magic of the voice. She tells him the reasons why she actually loved him, and that they all ended up eventually evolving into what a nasty, despicable person he's become. He gets very emotional and tries one final gush of words to really express to her why he did this and why it wasn't wrong that he did what he did. And she's obviously just basically talking about leaving him and going back to the people. And that's when he tells her that there's no chance of her being able to leave because she is just as much of a criminal as he is. And the people hate her every bit as much as they hate him, and they're tyrants. And she's absolutely confused. She apparently never realized that stealing all those toys from families, children, would make them hate you, but it does. And as he's as she basically calls him out, wondering what this voice is really going to do for her, he starts to tell her what the voice gets out of this as to what he gets out of it. And you can tell that he's basically going to monologue himself into a trap that shows why it's pointless for him to be doing this. But guards show up and tell him that there's a disturbance in the mines and he's got to get out of here. One thing I want to show about the art is all the facial expressions of Dagmar. Of everybody, really, but it's just really driving home a point. Anyway, as we pan back to the outside of Grimsvig, we see Santa Claus reading that letter again. It's basically a very long, drawn-out letter explaining that this child doesn't have a chimney because the chimney fell off the house and killed his father. So if Santa Claus would be so kind as to just use the front door, it will be unlocked. But be sure to be quiet because you don't want to wake his mother, who would be deathly afraid of a random stranger entering. And as that's going along, we see a nice shot of Santa running across housetops, finding the house, dropping down, and entering. Dagmar, having found out that this trap had already been laid, goes rushing outside to try and stop Klaus from getting caught, basically. The guards that still know her and love her for who she is try and stop her, telling her that the people of town do not like her. She doesn't believe it. She runs outside and gets to meet her people for apparently the first time in quite some time. And they immediately start pelting her. Of course, the Emperor's rather proud of himself, and he's leaving to go and deal with Klaus himself. You have one final shot of the Baroness being pelted by her people, and they drag her back inside. So we pan back to where Klaus is, in the house where he was expecting an old woman to be passed out on the chair. It's actually our old friend, Sergeant Linkfist. A little familiar rune. The Joy rune. That's kind of... yeah. So, as Klaus discovers Linkfist tied to the chair, the guards rush in. The trap has been sprung. They immediately start fighting. We get a wonderful fight scene that I'm not going to cover too much, where Klaus basically battles his way to the top of a tower, jumps out through the window, over the side. Get this wonderful escape scene. He gets hit with an arrow as he's fleeing, which we see here, and falls down in through a window. So, everybody's always talking about this, so I'm going to talk about this. But here you can see line of sight, which directs your eyes on where to go in this panel. Because as we see here, it's actually a full-page spread, right? Might be confused on where to look. The lines drag you across here, down to here. See here, the fire lines keep dragging you down. That leaves us with the only spot to go is up here. The lines still point us down into this. Klaus falls through the window and into a house and starts begging these people inside for help. And they immediately call the guards on him. Well, by they, I mean the mom. Moms, am I right, guys? Klaus bails, takes off running, slides down another roof into a a deep, deep hole. But he manages to make it across, catch one of these drapes, I guess you would call them, stabbing the arrow that he jerked out of his shoulder into the drape to kind of slow his descent as he falls down. You've seen this in every Disney film ever, but it's still pretty cool looking. Got a nice little shot of Klaus coming down. See guards running around, civilians running. Boom! Klaus hits the ground, rolls up, still begging for help, and a little boy finds him and offers to bring him home. Klaus basically... Let's move on first. We shoot back to the town, a different part of the town, rather, and we see guards basically raiding houses and pulling children from houses. And the townspeople are freaking out, and the guards are just like, this is your fault. You guys did this. You don't have anyone to blame. Blame Santa Claus. It's his fault. and we move back out to the boy and Klaus, where they're now out in the woods. Santa told them that they didn't have time to go home. Basically, he needed these flowers so that he could make this cure for the poison, because he was going to die. They run into Lily. The boy's terrified, but Santa lets him know that everything's okay. We get a nice little shot of the Emperor, or the Baron, leaving Grimsvig. Dagmar basically asking him why he would do that and where he's going, and he doesn't answer. He just pulls on his gloves and leaves. We shoot back to the little boy. He's now got he's basically fabbed up a sleigh, and he's got Santa on it, and he's pulling him along. Santa, of course, the full-grown, ripped man, so this little kid's having some serious trouble. And he gets an idea, saddles up Lily, and they continue into the woods. As the page rolls over, we get a shot of the Baron looking at some tracks in the snow. This is telling us that he's been following and tracking Klaus this whole time. He knows where he's going. His men are kind of like, oh, why are you here? Don't you have more important stuff to do? The Baron, of course, shuts them down aggressively, but lets him know that this is one of his biggest and most important plans that he has to be done, and he's going to make sure to see it out through to the end. And this concludes Chapter 5. Now, there's actually 2 more chapters, because I'm a fool, and I've been putting 6 when there was actually 7. But I think it's an honest mistake, because how many freaking times do they do a 7-book graphic novel? That's just weird. I guess it's fitting, though, because Christmas and the holidays, 7 being more holiday-themed in number. Anyway, thanks for sticking it out through to the end. Hope you guys liked the review. I will try and get the other 2 done before January, and I'll also try and get some other stuff out there so I'm not just drowning you in Klaus. Hail Hydra, baby.